If you want to make a creative impact, you can either master the game, disrupt the game, or overpower the game. The next approach is to disrupt the game. Understand the rules well enough so that you can challenge the system. Kendrick Lamar also started his path early, becoming a rapper back in his hometown of Compton. He linked with Top Dog Entertainment, or TDE, a local management group that was also on the come up, and started his own collective called Black Hippie. But out of all the rappers that were in that collective, he shined the most, particularly when he got his mixtape in the hands of another Compton icon.
J. Cole, did you tell Dr. Dre about Kendrick?
Kendrick Lamar disrupted the game, specifically hip-hop, in two distinct ways. First, he established credibility well beyond the rap circles and the b-boy critics. His honest, almost intellectual style made it easier for outsiders and people that didn't understand hip-hop to understand what was going on in his community and in his life. When he talked about his challenges in Compton, specifically in his first major album, Good Kid, Mad City, it was almost like he was a reporter. He was giving a first-person view for people that didn't understand. The clarity continued through his albums, to the crescendo of actually getting a Pulitzer Prize for one of them. Now, I don't know about you, but I didn't know, even as a writer myself, that rap albums could get Pulitzer Prizes, but I imagine a lot of us figured that out when it happened to Kendrick. Second, he created on his own time. A lot of critics today call modern day hip hop microwave culture, because you throw an artist in there, you give them a couple hit singles, and they get hot really quickly, and then before you know it, they're cold on the plate. In his first couple decades as an artist, Kendrick released albums every 4 to 5 years, which is unheard of in the hip hop community. No, actually, there are other artists that do that, but no one cares when they come out. Whenever he came out with the album, it was a movement, an event. The extra time cooking allowed him to stretch what modern day hip hop could be, from the social, political discussions of To Pimp a Butterfly to the more modern, therapy-based double album, Mr. Burrell and the Big Steppers. When it comes to Kendrick Lamar, people aren't talking about his deep level of emotional intelligence. That is required if you're going to dissect something or someone to the level that he has with his recent songs. His last album actually talked about his dark side, his shadow side. He was doing his shadow work. And that came to understanding the dark side of his family, the dark side of his marriage, even the dark side of himself. He had Eckhart Tolle come in and do the interludes for the album. That's about as deep as you can get. That's extremely deep for a public-facing artist. And that means no matter what happens to him next career-wise, he's already won. The first thing I think that's worth discussing, and feel free to jump in the comments, is that there are actually no new chapters. One of the things that bothers me a lot, and I've mentioned this a couple times, I've even mentioned it in some of my latest books, is when people say that chapter is closed, it's a new chapter, it's a new beginning, the past is gone, we're going to start again. I don't believe in that. I've never believed in that. Even when I was a kid, I didn't go for that. And I must have been really young when I discovered that. Wherever you go, there you are. There are no new chapters. The baggage, the challenges, the trauma, which he talks a lot about trauma, which is where the emotional intelligence thing comes from. All that comes with us, no matter what we're doing. And so the key part is to understand and accept that. You don't have to like it. You might not want to take your past with you. I get it. I got some stuff back there too that I'd rather leave behind. But the fact is that you're going to carry that with you. Once you understand that, then it becomes a lot easier. And that comes down to two, I found, basic things. Let me go ahead and take the thing off here so I can, I'm sure on my South Jersey roots, suddenly my hands are going. So in there not being no new chapters, my triple negatives are killing it today. There being no new chapters. Number one, it's about you embracing the past. What actually happened? Until you face the past, then you don't know what stuff you might be processing, what stuff might actually be holding you back. You don't know. It's unclear. You don't know what's happening with that. So you have to go back into the past and dig into that and say, okay, what exactly happened? What are my feelings about that? What is that trauma? Oh, and then you start to connect the dots and be like, oh, I don't trust these kind of people because it reminds me of this thing that happened once when I was a kid. I'm still carrying that with me. And then it becomes, find the gems. What stuff do you want to carry with you? And what stuff don't you want to carry with you? What stuff do you want to carry with you? What stuff don't you want to carry with you? So number one, as far as there being no new chapters, First, you have to embrace the past. You have to face it. We tend to put things away. That's just human nature. But that stuff doesn't go away. As I talked about in a previous episode, I'll throw the link below. When it has to do with our shadow and those things that we don't want to look at, it actually can come down to it being at the wheel. There are things in our past that we haven't faced yet, but they're actually subconsciously, shout out to Carl Jung, are helping us make decisions or not helping us make decisions in our current life. In other words, you have to go backwards to go forwards. And the second part is to find out what the gems are. There might be a lesson from that family member that created so much trauma for you, but there could be one gem in there. You don't have to forgive them per se, but that doesn't mean that they are wrong all the time, right? A broken clock is right 2 times a day. When it comes to Kendrick Lamar, that begins with the first album, Good Kid, Mad City. And it's literally about his childhood. I want to say he's probably very early 20s when this came out. It's probably 23, 24. I got a few years on him, so I'm trying to do the math backwards. But, he's very young. And he's talking about, again, it says it in the title, him being a kid with good intentions, a level head, as I used to say back in my day, but being in an environment with violence, sex, drugs, robbery, police brutality, murder. Again, this is Compton, and we have to go back to the 1990s to talk about his childhood. He looks at it unflinchingly, and he talks about his part in it and those insights that he got from the life on the street, for lack of a better term. It's like the good and the bad. It reminds me a lot of, if y'all have seen the movie Friday, which actually takes place in Compton as well, one of my favorite movies, hilarious comedy, particularly if you understand the inner city. I'm not from the inner city, but my family is. Shout out to Camden, New Jersey. And so when I was growing up, and they had me in the burbs, they had me in some of the cities, but whenever it was summertime or even during Thanksgiving or whatever, I was in Camden. And so I'm familiar with those environments. My cousins are from the environment. Shout out to all of y'all. I love y'all. I miss y'all. I have to get back to the East Coast soon. So when I saw Friday, I was like, oh, I was on the East Coast. It's a West Coast movie, but I was like, this seems familiar. And all this stuff was funny because I remember some of that from my childhood and or living vicariously or being really connected to my closest cousins and my uncles and all the other stuff and seeing that kind of energy, even through my mother, who was raised there. A thing like Friday couldn't have happened unless Ice Cube and F. Gary Gray and other writers and creators involved, Chris Tucker, didn't see the humorous side and the beauty of being in a poor, rough neighborhood. But it's one of the funniest movies I've ever seen to this day. But you got to accept all that to actually find the humor in it. That's the gem. And Good Kid, Mad City has some very dark tracks, and also has some skits on there, other things that are ridiculously funny. This album came out, I want to say, 15 years ago. I can look it up. You guys can look it up. You're more than welcome to. But I think it came out 15 years ago, and it still is relevant today. This is, again, a kid, a very young adult, who's making peace with his past. The way it's done is masterful, mostly because he takes responsibility for the chaos that he created. And he also understands, as far as Mad City, that it's the entire environment and every individual in it who's creating the chaos, because a lot of them are in a place of pain. My recommended track on here would be Dying of Thirst, Don't Forget About Me. I think that's the second half of it. It's an 8 to 9 minute masterpiece. I don't think there's an official video for it, but be sure and check it out if you are going to grab his album. If you want more context, and you might be like, Damon, I don't know what you're talking about as far as like the Black experience and being in the hood and all this other stuff, that's okay. That's okay. As my family and I joke about, my friends and family are like a Benetton ad. Shout out to you if you remember the Benetton ads, where they're all from all over the place. Again, I have immigrants in my family, I got folks from other places, whatever. So you might not understand the experience. If you want to go deeper, I highly recommend the book Black Food by Bryant Terry. Shout out to Bryant. I hope you're doing fantastic. It's such a big book. This is a heavy book. This is probably 6 pounds. Woo! It's a big book. It's a big book. It's all about the African-American experience, and a lot of it is connected to nourishment, whether it's the nourishment of emotions, the nourishment, obviously, of food, Brian is actually a decorated chef. I've known him for years, so it's related to food as well. You see the plantains, and man, it's making me hungry. I want to say it's Jamaican food. Whew. Yeah. Shout out to Ray and nephew. I got some stories, but like this talks about all those different things, all different essays. I want to say probably, well, all the names are right here, but if you look closely, my name is on there. You can freeze it if you like. I actually wrote one of the essays in here, and it's talking about Black male masculinity and how we are vulnerable in certain ways, and those ways that I really want to pass on, or at least give the blueprint for my two sons who are Black and brown. My sons are Black, African American, and they're also Hindi, specifically Gujarati. Those are my kids. What did I want to pass on to them? That's what the essay is about. All of them have a very similar energy. So if you want to understand a lot of stuff he's talking about in Good Cat, Mad City, and whether we're urban/suburban kid like I am, or it's more like Kendrick's experience where it's like he grew up completely in the hood, as we call it, you know, or ends up being a blend of all of them, which a lot of us are. As I said, there's a lot of slashes in there. Then this will help you put your arms around that experience. And the emotional intelligence component, again, is understanding that there are new chapters. So when my hands start moving all over the place, when I get really excited, when I get loud, which I'm generally not a loud person, but when I get loud, respectfully, that's South Jersey. That's Camden. Shout out to Camden. I will give the cross streets, but I want to give my family's info out. But like that corner, like that's straight from that corner. And that's the energy that's coming from there. That came from when I was a little kid. I haven't lived in Camden for a very long time, but that energy is still there because that's part of my childhood. Just as much as with some of the conflict and issues that Kendrick has coming up recently, and all the music's come up to address those things. Again, you just do a Google search and get way deeper into this. That energy from Compton is coming out. But if he didn't make peace and realize that there were no new chapters, he'd be really confused right now, which frankly, some artists are really confused right now as far as trying to show their true selves, but not being sure who that true self is. If you don't know who your true self is, then that might mean that you're running away from that past, or you're not accepting that past that helped inform who you are. That is my sermon on that. One of the reasons why I'm doing the live today, there's two reasons. One of them, shout out to Making Media Matter. We actually had a brief conversation on one of the recent videos I did about Kendrick's emotional intelligence. Very short video. I have the link right below. It's literally 45 seconds. And they replied and they were like, hey, this is actually similar to a video I was working on, but I was going to do a long form video talking about Kendrick and how he was handling different things with the stresses and with the creativity that's coming out of being in these stressful positions. And I was like, I can't wait to see it. And it came out and they killed it. So be sure and check out their video. Again, it's Making Media Matter. So good connecting with you. I'm loving your work. Keep doing your thing. You know I subscribed, so shout out to them. All right, so what we're talking about today is Kendrick Lamar's emotional intelligence power, how we can look at his discography and better understand, only 4 albums, better understand our own emotional intelligence and what we can gain from it. Again, it's Damon Brown, entrepreneurial coach. I keep wanting to say entrepreneurial coach to the stars. There are some stars out there. You're all stars, but there are some popular people out there that are, that I'm happy, proud to be behind. But it's more a saying from the 60s, 70s, and 80s. Such and such from the stars. So I'm not gassed up over here. But you guys are all great. I love coaching y'all. If you want to coach with me, go and check it out. We'll go ahead and set up a session and see if we can work together. Come to you every Wednesday at 1:11 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, Vegas time. You subscribe for free, and my complete collection is out. You can watch it right now at BringItWorth.tv after our conversation is done, if you please. All right, so the second thing we can learn from Mr. Lamar is to embrace your new role. Now, his next album ended up being called To Pimp a Butterfly, which sounds rough. Let me go ahead and put that link up there so you know what I'm talking about. And what it basically means, based on what he talks about it's actually a closing poem, which tells you the direction he's going in. A closing poem to the entire album is him saying, "All right, we're all caterpillars." He's talking about Compton. We're all caterpillars in Compton. We're all caterpillars. But then, ideally, some of us get out, or some of us get to a certain level where we can see the dangers of being a caterpillar. And then when we become a butterfly, then we feel like part of it was multidimensional. But one of the things is that we feel like we almost feel like a survivor's guilt. We're the ones that made it. I have people that I grew up with that, as I'm thinking about it, the list keeps getting longer. There's people that I grew up with that aren't here anymore. And some of them not from natural causes, or they're in situations that they can't get out of. There's a guilt with that. I got my master's in magazine publishing from Northwestern. I got 2 beautiful kids, a beautiful home. You know, I can chit chat with y'all. There's 18,000 plus of y'all at this moment that are subscribed to the channel. Like, I'm wearing a Brooks Brothers blazer. Like, when you kind of check in and you're like, and you're going through whatever you're going through, and then you're like, oh crap, I might have actually been one of them that made it, because you're so busy doing what you're doing. Once that happens, which is what this album, in my opinion, is all about, then you have to process, number one, the survivor's guilt for you being, quote unquote, the one that made it. The second thing you need to do is accept that it's not your job to save everyone else. Which, if you listen to Pimp a Butterfly, fantastic album, one of my favorite albums of all time. He talks about that. He talks about giving somebody $1. There's literally one called Can You Spare a Dollar? I screwed up the name of it, but if you're familiar with the album, or if you check out the album right now, you know what I'm talking about. There's that song on there. I could go through the whole list, even with like his romantic relationships, even his relationships with his friends from the hood. And then there's a fantastic, one of my favorite songs on there called Institutionalized. And it sounds like it's nonfiction. It's a story of his friends being fresh out of jail, and Kendrick is invited to an award show, or he's there to get an award, and he hooks the homies up, gets them suited and booted, as they say, got them clean, paid their way to come there, and then they just started wilding out. And it's like, he's like, oh wait, I can't save everybody. I can't do it. I'm the one that made it, but I can't save everybody. And, you know, there's lots of tales. I don't even say any names. If you're around in the 90s, you already know what direction I'm going in, where amazing people in the hip hop community, people that are making millions of dollars, that try to go back and save everybody. And then they end up being the ones that claim bankruptcy. They end up being the ones that end up on the street. They end up being further back, kind of like the lottery winners, who a good percentage of lottery winners end up being bankrupt or in debt or in a worse place than they were before they won the lottery within like 3 to 5 years. You can look it up, the statistics. Same type of energy. This album talks about that. There are 2 things you can do from an emotional intelligence standpoint to process this idea of the new role. The first thing is, as transition experts talk about, shout out to my mentors who have talked to me about that. Transition experts talk about, there's something called the messy middle. So you're at where you're at, but you're not really happy there, or you want to do something else. You want to go in a different direction. And then, of course, is where you want to go. Between the two is a messy middle. I talk about that in my book, Career Remix. I have it somewhere over here. There it is. I talk about it in my book, Career Remix. And one of the things I talk about is it being comparable to you being on the shore, and there being an island that you want to go to, or another shore in the distance that you really want to get to. You have a strong idea it's there. You might not even be able to fully see it, but you have a strong idea it's there. And then at a certain point, you have to leave the shore. And there's always going to be a point where it's too far to go back and it's too far to go forward. And you have to make a decision. That's the messy middle to me. And it's either you're going to roll back like Walmart prices, or you're going to push forward, not in a negative way, but push forward and actually allow, to go with the metaphor, allow the chrysalis to form and go from a caterpillar to a butterfly. At a certain point, you have to make that decision. That's with any transition. Sometimes it's easier than others, but we always have to have that moment where it's like, I am going to go forward. The second part is letting go of what doesn't serve you. So the first part is accepting that it's going to be messy. Even for a moment, it's going to be messy. You're going to have your doubts. Just accept it before you even start the journey. The second part is letting go of what doesn't serve you. And as an example I talked about, his homies from the hood, some of them, I'm sure, have adapted and are supportive of him, whatever, or doing their own thing. And then some of them are going to be exactly where they are. And there's no amount of money, no amount of acclaim, no amount of Grammys that will help him get them out of where they're at, because that's a choice that they have to make. That is emotional intelligence, my friend. That is emotional intelligence, which again, shout out to Kendrick. He breaks it down amazingly well. All right, Emotional Intelligence by Daniel Goleman. The Godfather. I remember seeing this book when I was young. It was actually on my parents' shelf. Shout out to my mom. It was on my parents' shelf. And back before Brene Brown, shout out to Brene, but way before Brene Brown. Back when Brene Brown was maybe in still doing her dissertation. Like, this is really early on. I can look up the year, but I want to say sometime in the 90s. This is the guy that literally, from my research, has coined the term emotional intelligence. If you want to go to the root where we keep saying EQ, which means emotional intelligence, you keep hearing it, you keep saying it. Damon keeps saying it. You want to go to the root? This is the root. Start with that. Fantastic book. You should have it on your shelf. And most recently, a surprise episode that came out last Sunday, How to Know Yourself More, A Beginner's Guide, episode 374. I take some of the best stuff. We've had a lot of good discussions here, I would say. Y'all coming into the comments, us having some very vulnerable conversations. Thank you so much for the folks that jumped in the comments in the episode before last. We're talking about vulnerability and relationships and all that stuff. Heavy, important stuff. All that stuff is in here, in this. You don't need to watch all the episodes. You just need to watch this one and more. So it's the episode where I'm talking about accepting your shadow from a few weeks ago. It's the episode from, I believe, a week ago, where how to deal with difficult people or difficult relationships, because people usually aren't difficult. It's usually the dynamics that are difficult. Also talk about and share the basic of emotional intelligence, focusing on Brene Brown's work and having some clips from her. And then also some content as far as how to get yourself into enough of a relaxed or mindful mindset so that you slow down enough so you actually feel where your emotions are coming from, and therefore you can process them in a certain way. Really proud of this episode. Be sure and check it out. It's a deep dive. That's the best way I can put it. And I hope y'all get a lot out of it. This is the Bring Your Worth Show. I'm entrepreneurial coach Damon Brown. You can reach me at damonbrown.net. Happy to serve you. I feel like I need one of those McDonald's things, like 300-400 coaching clients served. Maybe one day. Bring Your Worth TV every Wednesday at 1:11 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, Vegas time. I must need some more kombucha because my tongue is tied. You can subscribe for free at the link below, or just go to bringyourworth.tv. Click below. If you're checking me out on Amazon, shout out to y'all. Just hit the follow button on there, or whatever platform you happen to be on. You can rock with that. And the latest book is the complete Bring Your Worth collection. You can listen to it for free. It's about 8 hours of content, several books. Go enjoy it, have fun, and support the channel. All right, the last part, when it comes to what we can learn from Kendrick Lamar and his emotional intelligence, which is shown in the albums that have come out recently, and as well as particularly the songs that have come out recently, is to forgive everyone, especially yourself. Bears repeating. You have to forgive everyone, especially yourself. That doesn't mean that you have to like what people did or how people did things. As you're able to do that with other people, then it makes it easier for you to accept how you did things or what you did. And then ends becoming what they call a virtuous cycle. Because the more you're able to make peace with the so-called mistakes, the regrets, the shame, the guilt, get back to Brene Brown, but the shame, the guilt, the challenges, the things that if I can turn back time, like Cher, I would change these things. I'm lucky where I only have like maybe 3 or 4 things. But one of the reasons why I have such few things is that I've forgiven myself because I only knew so much at that time. The reason why I know better now is because I went through that and I learned to do better. Kendrick goes through this a lot. First with the album, which I believe is the one that won the Pulitzer, if I remember correctly. Please feel free to correct me in the comments. His album called Damn. Shout out to the curse words. If you watch the show, you know I like to curse. If you know me in person, you know if you coach with me, let's be honest, I'm not a PG coach. Let's keep it real. Because sometimes you have to keep it realer than real. You just keep it real on here. This fantastic album is him making reckoning with all the dark sides of his personality, what they call shadow work. This was the first half of that. We didn't realize it was the first half. There's another album after this. It was the first half of that. And each song, I want to say it's 12 songs. Each song is named after a particular trait. So one is called Blood. One is called DNA. DNA is one of my favorite songs of his of all time. Fantastic song. If you listen to the song, he's talking about his family lineage. It sounds like it's a song where it's just hype, you have your shoulders going. If there wasn't a copyright thing, I would totally play the song right now, but you can find it easily. Just look it up on YouTube. It's DNA. It's one of the most popular songs of his catalog. Check it out. Fantastic video too, by the way. His video is stunning. Amazing videos. Heart-stopping. It's like 4 minutes long. Please check it out. If I would have been thinking straight, I would have went in and put it in the links. But, you can find it. Just look up Damn DNA, Kendrick Lamar. I spelled it for you right there. Each song is talking about a different aspect of his family lineage and how his mother and his father, and going back to his uncle, and there's a lot of stories there, they all make up who he is. And so even, again, I think the song DNA resonates with me in a certain way just because there's 2 different types of DNA, right? There's the DNA that, quite literally, the scientific DNA, where it's like, okay, my 2 kids look like me. They have my forehead. One of them has my mother's hair. So that DNA comes through me because that's the connector. Like, we can break it down. But then there's another type of DNA. It's almost like nature versus nurture. And that's the DNA of being in an environment. That's the DNA of when I get excited, suddenly, I'm a little boy from Camden. I'm not a guy that went to Northwestern. I'm not a guy that's done TED Talks. Suddenly I'm the kid from Camden because that's where my family's from. There's that kind of DNA. He addresses both of those things. I love that conversation that he has with this. There's 2 things when it comes to forgiving everyone, though. The first thing is understanding your part in it. You had a part in it. In my relationships that I broke up, whether it's friendships or romantic, when I have tension with my kids, if I end up having a coaching client, or not so much clients, but like a business partner, whatever, I got stories. I share quite a few of them actually in my book, whether it's Career Remix or in the Complete Bring Your Worth collection, where it doesn't work. It just stops. But it's not sudden. It seems sudden, but it's not sudden. And even if the other person or the other party or the organization is acting like a jerk, there might have been certain boundaries that I could have set that I did not set. There's certain things that I could have expressed that I did not express. There's certain levels of communication, of intimacy, of connection that might have been falling apart. And I played 50% of a part of it, even if it is an organization. And I got stories. But even an organization, as my mentors say, even an organization is an organism. That in itself is almost like a person. It's almost like a body. It's functioning in a certain way. Everyone has their role. Someone is the heart. Someone is the kidney. Someone is the lungs. Someone is the brain, et cetera, et cetera. And it goes from there. My whole point is that no matter what those situations are, I know I played a part in it. It can't just be one person running somebody else over, one organization taking over things. There could have been certain things that you could have done to prevent it from happening. That doesn't mean you beat yourself up. You want to make sure the scales are balanced. It doesn't mean you beat yourself up. It means you take responsibility for and reflect enough to know what parts you actually played a part in it. So know the part that you played a part in it. With my business situations or personal or intimate relationships that have fallen apart, I know I played a role in them. And it's like, okay. And the power in that is, number one, you're able to have your understanding and your ownership of the situation. Number two, it actually empowers you because you realize you played a part in it. You're not the victim. We rarely are. There's situations where we are purely a victim, but most of the time we are not. We actually do play a part in it. And number three, we're able to balance it out so that the next time we're in a similar situation, we know perhaps the negative or not so wise decisions we made when it didn't work out the first time. But without that reflection, we don't really own what that is. And then the second part, which is actually a big part of the Bring Your Worst show, is ideally passing on that insight to other people. Kendrick in Damn is able to talk about these really intense topics. And particularly with the last album I'm about to bring up, he's able to talk about these intense topics because he's actually done the processing himself. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to address things. And with the drama and controversy that's happened with him against other rappers over the last week or two, so many things that he said, and Making Media Matters talks about this again in their video. The link is below if you missed it at the top of the show. Is that he wouldn't be able to have these mature level conversations about other people's roles, about how other people were showing up, about how the greater whole shows up if he didn't do that inner work himself. If you don't do the inner work, then how are you going to be objective enough to talk about anything or anyone else? The secret is you can't. The danger in that is that you might feel like you're being objective, but it could be that stuff from the past that you're not dealing with. It could be the survivor's guilt. Going back to number two, it could be the survivor's guilt that's really talking, but not really your sense. It could be you not forgiving yourself or other people, and you carry that burden, that weight. When you don't forgive somebody or something, you're the one that's carrying the weight, not the other person. We got it twisted. When you forgive something or someone, you're letting yourself off the hook. I've had some rough stuff done to me, straight up. So I'm not speaking, again, I've been through some of this, so I'm not speaking from some abstract thing. It's like, no, you see the gray hairs, I've been through enough stuff. And forgiving someone or something, if you're capable of doing it, at least to a certain extent, or to look at it like a spectrum, you're going to forgive them 60%, but you can't forgive whatever you can do, you're actually letting yourself of that, letting go of that burden yourself. That albatross for you is getting off your neck, not for them. And there's been so many beautiful stories where people have said sorry to me. I've heard other people say sorry to other people months, years, sometimes decades. I wish I was making this up. Decades after some trifling stuff happened. And going back to my East Coast roots, after some trifling stuff happened. But by that point, that person that was given the apology had already forgave them ages before. Imagine them holding that weight for months, years, decades of, I hate this person. This person did this to me. I'm going to carry this. I'm not going to let them forget it. Who's carrying that? You are. One of the most powerful things I ever heard from a therapist, I said, that person owes me an apology. And the therapist said, what if they never give it to you? Then how are you going to deal with it? Because Damon, that's your burden now. That part's your burden. They might feel whatever guilt, shame, happy, glad, sad, as we used to say, whatever Brene Brown word of the week you want to use in there. They're probably feeling that. But that has nothing to do with you. That's their journey. Your journey is, are you going to forgive them or not? And thank God I did. I'm not even going to tell the end of the story because they could have said sorry. They could have not said sorry. Kind of didn't matter because I'd already forgiven them. Powerful stuff. And that's insight. I didn't plan on going there, but that's where we're at. That's insight that you can pass on to others, ideally, when you're able to do some of that deeper work. And deep work he did do, man. His last album came out about a year ago. Double album, Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers. It might not make much sense to you once you listen to the double album. You'll get it. All the links are below if you want to check out his work. Please support his work. It's fantastic. That's one of the reasons why I want to highlight him in this episode. Deep. Now, Damn, I believe, like I said, was the one that won the Pulitzer Prize. This came after that. And it's like Damn to the next level. Again, I said it's a double album, so like twice as much content, twice as much music. And he's talking about sexual abuse in the family. He's talking about how he deals with racism, not towards him, against others. Right? So everyone's talking about, oh, people are racist against me. No, he's talking outside. Deep stuff, heavy stuff. He's talking about his marriage and some deep stuff to the point where I had to pause the music for a second and be like, whoa. Again, I'm married. I was like, oh, homie, wow, we're talking about that? That's what we're talking about? Is that where we're going? Okay, it was last year. It's like, oh, it's 2023? Okay, I guess we're going there. Well, I guess I'll get in the car. To be able to go that deep. But again, it represents those two different parts of it. Know the part you played in it, which he's extremely apparent or transparent as far as what part he's played in it. And the second part is him actually passing on the insight to us. And by the end of the double album, there's a certain insight and maturity that I have not heard in his previous albums. And you're looking at the scope going all the way back again to Good Kid, Mad City, which came out, 15, 16 years ago, to Mr. Morale, which came out a year ago, and then to the singles, which means the individual songs that came out over the past week. Again, you just Google search, you're probably seeing his name all over the place, and the context around it. It's on the cover of the New York Times, I think, this week. So you probably heard about it. You see the maturity. You see what we call in writing and storytelling. You see the through line, and with that through line, it's just like, okay, it's a beautiful thing. If you want to go deeper, check out The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. If you check my YouTube short, which I threw the link below, feel free to check it out. I talk about how Eckhart Tolle, who probably should show the book, The Power of Now. Check it out. Power of Now, Eckhart Tolle. Best-selling book. I want to say it came out, probably around the time Good Kid, Mad City came out. Parallels, I'm not even realizing it. It's about 15 years ago. Fantastic book. German philosopher / I want to say psychologist, and he's talking about how we can get centered in the present and actually forgive ourselves in some ways of the past. That's my interpretation of it. More complicated than that, but that's the basic idea. In Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers, I listened to it. First came out, I'm a big Kendrick fan. Listened to it when it first came out, downloaded it. Immediately started listening to it, I went for a walk. I remember the exact moment. Went for a walk. And then it's in the second album, and I'm walking around again my neighborhood in Vegas, and I hear this voice came on, and I'm like, "Who's this guy with the German?" I swear, it's like I'm talking to myself. Who's this guy with the German accent? And then I had to look at the credits. I was like, "He got Eckhart Tolle to do the interludes." Other people, and I love Jay-Z. I've interviewed Jay-Z. I've done a lot of videos about Jay-Z, all this stuff. But I'm like, if he got like Jay-Z to do an interlude, I'd be like, oh yeah, Sean Carter, that's great. Or his former mentor, Dr. Dre. Oh yeah, that's dope. Okay, what's the next song? No, you got Eckhart Tolle, who will be part of this emotional intelligence movement of the previous generation. Again, it was him, and then shortly after him it was Brene. Like, part of that second wave that Daniel Goleman was, again, the ancestor, the godfather of. A decade later, it was Eckhart Tolle and a few other folks. I'm thinking of Gary Zukav, Seed of the Soul, like same vibe. And then Brene Brown was right after that. So he went back. It wasn't like he had Brene Brown on there, which if I was a musician, I have her on there. But I tried to DM her or something. But it's like, he didn't do that, which I would be awesome. It's like, no, he got Eckhart Tolle. It's like, oh my God, you are trying to go deep. This is, I think, his most popular book, definitely his breakout book. Yeah, another book called The New Earth, which I have not gotten into, but I'm familiar with this one. Check it out if you want to learn more about what Kendrick is talking about and the insight that comes with that. And the last recommendation, if you want to go deeper, learning to forgive yourself. Self-Compassion by Kristen Neff. I just got the book because of a mix-up with Amazon and other things. I have 2 copies of the book, so I have 1 copy from my office and one, I guess, when I'm traveling. And I just started reading it. I'm rocking with it. The reason why I'm recommending this is because this book has been recommended to me for a year. It's been out for a while, but it's been recommended for a minute. And I started reading it, and I'm like, oh, right. And Self-Compassion, shout out to Pema Chodron. If you've watched the recent videos, you know who she is, the awesome monk that I'm a big fan of. But if you listen to Pema Chodron's work, and then as I'm getting into Kristen Neff's work, even a little bit with Eckhart Tolle's work, and the book that I just mentioned recently, The 4 Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz, shout out to him. All these books have a similar, sure my pile of books doesn't fall. All these books have a similar energy. All this shit starts with you. It doesn't start with your partner. It doesn't start with your family. It doesn't start with your kids. It doesn't start with your job. It doesn't start with your money. All this starts with you. Therefore, if you want to be in a better place, if you want to be a better person, if you want to show up better, then you have to start with you. It didn't begin with you. Or more like it did begin with you. And there was something that happened. There's some process, something along the way that maybe somebody did to you, maybe something that was in your environment, shout out to Kendrick, and it got internalized. It reminds me of that experiment that people often talk about where there could be twins, almost literally the same DNA, same height, same features, identical twins. And they could go through something. And one twin takes this lesson from it. And the other twin takes another lesson from it. Same experience. Again, my family's from the hood. And there's so many amazing things that they're doing and so many things that I'm proud of that they've done. And there's so many other folks from that same block, from that same neighborhood, people that I see when I go back home, people that they see when they go back home. And they could be stuck, or they could be literally talking about something that happened in high school. And they're my parents, so they're a lot older than me. I'm talking about 50 years ago. But it depends on what lessons you take away from it. So that's all these different discussions that we've had in the lives, including today. One of the things I love about Kendrick's work is that idea of self-ownership. He's never said the streets did this to me. He never said this family member did this to me, and that's why I'm alcoholic. That's why I'm on the streets. That's why I abuse people. That's why I'm showing up like this. It was always like, this is a family pattern. This is a pattern of my community. This is a pattern of us. Get double entendre. Shout out to you. But yeah, you're not like us. We have our own thing over here. And with us having our own thing, then there's certain things that are unique that need to be processed. But that's our responsibility, not yours, not the environment's, not other cultures, not other people's. That's our responsibility. As soon as we take ownership like that, then we'll be able to go ahead and get to these higher levels. But you got to go back and almost unprocess those things that you've internalized. For him, that began all the way back with Good Kid, Mad City. I'll throw the links up here. And him beginning to recognize, getting just objective enough to see some of the toxicity in his environment. To Pimp a Butterfly, which has to do with survivor's guilt, which I think he literally uses that term in the album, dealing with survivor's guilt and realizing he can't save everybody, but his job is to be a symbol for his community and support the ones that actually do want to move forward, because not everybody does. Then with Damn and accepting those things that are part of his DNA, part of his family culture, and realizing that he's going to take that with him no matter how many Grammys and Pulitzers he gets. And lastly, Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers, where he's basically saying, look, I'm almost like Mr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde. And there's so much negativity and so much growth I still need to do. Let's go through this together. Because by me creating this art, I'm actually healing generational trauma. There are things I'm addressing on this double album that my family does not talk about. And chances are, since you're similar to my community, you're probably not talking about it either. So I'm gonna risk my audience, I'm gonna risk my manhood, I'm gonna risk my ego, just so we can go on this journey together. And at the end of the journey, it'll be an unclogging. And from that unclogging, we'll all be able to grow as a culture. What more do you want from art? What more do you want from art? Hopefully I was able to break it down well for y'all as far as the insights that come from this great 4-album cycle, as they used to say. Shout out to the Baroque period, but this 4-album cycle and all the things that it represents and how much he's grown. I'm actually excited to see what's next for him career-wise, because I can identify with some of the stuff that he's talking about, and seeing them as his maturity with emotional intelligence. I'm personally invested. I want to see what happens next. If you happen to miss it, I did a super short. I make short shorts. Sound like a Nair commercial. And I think it came out on Sunday when a lot of the drama was happening. Again, just do a Google search. I'm not even going to get into it. but why Kendrick Lamar already won. And it talks a lot, very briefly, 45 seconds, about a lot of the concepts that we covered today. In fact, this as well as shout out to Making Media Matter, the popularity of this 45-second short, as well as the conversation with Make Media Matters, that made me think maybe we should have a conversation about it today. Because there are so many emotional intelligence lessons. Again, to take it from the top, there are no new chapters. Embrace your new role and forgive everyone, especially yourself. You can tell that Kendrick's done the work. And it's lovely, particularly as a fellow, I'm not young anymore, but as a fellow Black man. And there's so many things within our culture and within, like I said, underrepresented cultures, you might be able to identify with this, so many issues that we have. And for him to be considered part of the top 3 rappers right now and to address those things, frankly, he doesn't have to. That's what art does. Again, I talked about the newsletter at joindamon.me this morning. Art is a mirror. And to me, good art isn't about how much it sells, how many people like it, how popular the artist is. No, for me, good art is a mirror, a reflection of that soft underbelly, that dark side. Doesn't mean evil, just the dark side, the unknown side that we often hide. And artists are able to stand up and say, let me use my creativity to show my soft side, my underbelly, my dark corner of my psyche. And then in my art, you'll be able to see those things that you've traditionally been uncomfortable with. Let me be a vessel, not only for myself and to save myself, to understand myself, but also be a vessel for you through the art. So while you enjoy the art, you also have the positive of actually seeing a part of yourself that might have been hidden or scared you before. If that's not what art is, I don't want it. Anyway, thank you for coming through. My name is Damon Brown. I'm an entrepreneurial coach of non-traditional entrepreneurs, side hustlers, and solopreneurs like yourself. Come through. Happy to go ahead and coach with you, see if we are a good fit, and then see what we can do. You go to damonbrown.net to check it out. Bring Your Worth show every Wednesday at 1:11 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, Vegas time. You can subscribe for free. And until next time, remember, you can always bring your worth. You can always build from now. Take care of yourselves and others.